The best players in the world love to sit back and rely on the advantages of defensive play, growing their economy and upgrades, whilst goading their opponents into unfavorable attacks. They know if they execute their defense properly, they will always win over aggression. And they demand perfection from themselves to defend every single game. So guys, welcome to the PiG Daily. Today we're going to be looking at a build which engenders this very macro focus, this defensive focus, and even a very limited amount of scouting as well. It's going to be TY's Double Raven 3 Command Center opening in TvT, something him and Innovation, who I would say almost without a doubt are the two best Terrans in the world right now. They seem to kind of be separating themselves from the Maru, Beyond, and Alive sort of pack. These guys are incredible. They're doing it almost like every second TvT, sometimes 2 out of 3 TvTs in a series. It's a really strong macro build, so let's take a look at it. So if we just dive on in game, let's just get this going. So we're going to watch this from TY's camera viewpoint while I talk you guys through the opening. Keep in mind it is a little bit flexible, can change in a few different directions, and I will talk about those as much as possible as we go through. After we look at this replay, where it's a rather textbook example of the opening, we'll look at one where the opening doesn't go quite as well, and things are going to be harsh. Just to give you guys a bit of info, sorry, this is a game from the semifinals of the IAM Katowice World Championship between Alive and TY, and TY ended up very barely winning this series. So to start out, you want to be going for a gas first into your barracks. It's a very typical opening. This is the most standard opening across all 3 matchups at the moment. Now, this is a super macro focused build, as I was saying before, guys. It's used a huge amount recently by the 2 best Terrans in the world. Excuse me, TY and Innovation. But it's especially powerful in the current map pool because if you think about it, we have maps like Proxima Station and Honor Grounds. Maps which feature these protected in-base expansions, which are very easy to defend from ground attacks. The build usually shuns scouting, or even any form of aggression in favor of just very generic play that can block the majority of things the opponent can throw your way, whilst powering up your economy, production, and tech at a staggering rate. Of course, you are defending with only a very small yet elite group of high-tech units, and so your micro and positioning needs to be on point. There's a few different adjustments and variations, as I mentioned, which I'll be talking about as we go on, but most of it always follows the same sort of format. I do want to mention, because this is a super macro-focused build, because it is, relatively light on map control and scouting, it does require you to have those very good reactions and control. And because of that, if you're a mid or low tier player, you really only want to be trying to do this build if you love Ravens and you love defensive macro play. This is definitely a build order I recommend more towards the high level players, and even there, only towards those high level players that really enjoy that defensive macro play. If you're an aggressive player, this is probably not your cup of tea. Excuse me. Alright, so guys, continuing with the build. It was a gas first, and then you go straight into your normal command center on 20 supply, factory on 20 supply, you start a reactor after the Reaper. Now the Reaper always stays at home, just kind of chills. Notice on this map you can go out to the watchtower because that's a nice handy defensive watchtower outside your base. And then you want to drop your depot and your second gas. So let's go back just a little bit to double check the timings there. So if we fast forward, you see CC, factory, second depot, reactor, and then second gas geyser. So very typical order, same as you'll often see in TVP or even with a TVZ Hellion opening. And notice we're going to have a Hellion start up here right away for TY, and then a starport immediately. Now, there are some cases where he changes it up a little bit, but this is the more common way he's done it recently, where he just starts marine production, gets that Hellion out, and then we're going to see a tech lab on that factory pretty much immediately. But this Hellion, very important here to help defend against things like double Reaper pressure. So you can see he's hanging on here with the Marines, the Hellions. More Marines will be popping out. Tech lab on that factory. And the starport will swap over with that factory as soon as possible.
Add-on complete.
And immediately Raven production starts up. Now, with the factory, you do want to usually build another tech lab. However, because he's under quite a bit of pressure and he's been having a lot of his units traded out this game, TY is going to start a Widow Mine. But keep in mind, this is an adjustment based on the situation. This is not something that TY is going to do every game. Let's fast forward a little bit. The next thing you want to be doing is get a third command center. So we should see that go down in the near future. It's just defending, and you'll notice Ravens and Marines here covering the back base. Another Raven coming out immediately. Where's that third command center? There it is. Third command center. Ignore the defense for now. Let's just focus on the macro timings. Straight into a third gas and then a fourth gas. As soon as that third command center is down, you want to be getting those as quickly as possible. This game, TY slightly later on those because he was very busy defending there. Starts up tank production. And if we go back a few seconds, you'll notice after the second Raven pops out, the barracks and the starport will swap with each other. So he's going to start Viking production, and he's going to start building Marines and get Stim going as soon as he has the gas for it. And this is the same structure you'll be following every single game when you use this build. It's very versatile and very powerful. So let's go back just a few seconds and look at that defense of that Banshee. If you're not sure what's coming, you think maybe there'll be a Banshee, you pretty much always follow this format of grab a few Marines, or grab all your Marines with your Raven, and go and cover your back base, or your natural, and your new Raven popping out with the other Marines popping out at the front will be able to defend your main base. And using a combination of auto turrets and those Marines is able to shoo that Banshee away quite effectively. And the great thing about this, of course, is you get the double Raven. They're great for potentially harassing your opponent if you feel very confident. There are games where you can go across the map and do that. But you never need to build missile turrets with two Ravens. So that's the real advantage. You know, missile turrets are kind of a bit of dead weight in the mineral line. They don't really help you out later on against doom drops or anything like that. So it's something where doing this, the Raven is a much more versatile investment than the missile turret. Missile turret's just going to sit there. Ravens, you can go attack your opponent, drop auto turrets, and just break a position with them. You can harass mineral lines with them. And yeah, you can put down PDDs to win the air battle as well. So they're just a very versatile unit. So what you're going to notice with this build, guys, back to the actual build timings is, okay, cool. So, you know, you've swapped over, you've got Vikings on the way, you've got Stim, your third command center's done. It's 6 minutes, and there's still only one barracks, and there's no engineering bays, and there's no other production. And you're like, what the hell? So this is a very economic build. Like I said, you're relying on this small number of elite units to defend. The Vikings, the Raven, to provide you that air superiority. Marines, tanks coming out one at a time from these structures, all just there to defend. And here we're going to see the greedier transition. So this is important, guys. You guys who've been watching my Terran dailies for build orders, you'll have noticed from the opening, there's very rarely a set path. It's almost always based on how you want to adapt in that situation. So you always hit a certain point where it's like, okay, it's time to add barracks, engineering bays. And it's totally up to you. In this build, we're going to see engineering bays straight away. This is the greediest way of doing it. And you'll see TY do this sometimes. Other times he'll go second and third barracks because he feels like he needs that to be safer, just based on the situation or how he prefers to play that game. And then he'll add the double engineering bay and then the fourth and fifth barracks. But here in this game, you're going to see double engineering bay and then 4 barracks go down all around the same sort of time as he gets the money. So let's zoom out. Let's take a look. Double upgrade start. Latest extra barracks of all time. So the extra barracks are finally coming down. And notice you don't need starport production until you actually get a lot of Marines out, right? Like you don't need medevacs really. They don't serve a purpose until you've got a lot of Marines. So always going to use these reactors for these barracks. And this starport's actually going to build an extra one for the second barracks as well. So just very well planned here by TY. And yes, we are ignoring all the fighting that's going on, but that's kind of the idea. And the fourth and fifth barracks still isn't down. That's because he's been so busy fighting and microing. Normally that would have been down by now, but instead it gets delayed because he was floating 1,000 minerals there. Even gods miss macro just a little bit when they're in the middle of fighting. And yeah, just ends up with that double engineering bay, 5 barracks, factory, starport, production. And then as he gets the money, he can do the standard transition of adding on an extra factory, an extra 2 or 3 barracks, and potentially extra starports in the mega late game. Really solid build. Let's take a look now at how he was defending some of these other engagements past the first Banshee. And let's just take a glance through that. What's really fascinating is if you look at TY's vision, he just sees nothing, man. Like, he is so blind with this build. And this is why if you want to try doing this and you're not TY, maybe you do want to mix in like an SCV scout or something like that. But it's very important with like the first Reaper early on for you not to lose that. Because you are defending with the bare minimum, every unit's very important. You really are demanding that high level of control and positioning. And whilst you can defend every attack coming your way, it will rely on you executing that very well. So he's just controlling his watchtower here on honor grounds. Knows he wants to hang on to that position. He's actually got the pretty good spawn here. As he has a nice drop path right into the back of the main base. And we see here he gets kind of surprised by this push a little bit, throws down a few desperation auto turrets. And you're going to see TY just going for his trademark, let's control the skies. And this is very important, controlling the skies. Because with this style, you don't have stim early. You don't have a lot of Marines or Marine production. You're basically saying, you know what, Marines are kind of trash early on in TvT. And that's really accurate. They actually are kind of terrible at this point. Because they're very slow, they're immobile. Even when stim finishes, you can see they do kind of get shredded. So they're just not the greatest unit early on. And as a result, siege tanks and the air units which provide those siege tanks with the control over the vision are usually going to be much more effective. So TY always looking to make sure he has those uses those Ravens and Vikings to control the skies, keeps his tank positionings up, defending his frontmost expansion at all times, and that's very key in allowing him to actually defend all early aggression. Past that in this game, I think it's a pretty standard one. I don't think there was anything else I wanted to look at here, guys. So, yeah, he's just going to play a normal game from here. I like to keep these dailies very crisp and very focused on the information at hand. So I'm going to hop out and I'm going to look at a different attack, so a much more aggressive play, and how you can adjust this build to be a little bit safer against 2 gas, you know, those very 1 base openings, and also against just any sort of situation where maybe you're not that comfortable. Maybe you're like, you know what, I want to do this build, but I'm just not as good at micro as TY. And you know what's funny? You'll often see when the meta changes, this whole new Raven meta, right? The patches came out, what, like three months ago or so, that made the Ravens so much more powerful. But it's one of those interesting things because, let me find the replay. Yeah, because the pro players themselves, you can actually see how their builds are evolving, that they weren't as comfortable at defending when they first were getting used to this play. So what I'm going to show you is how TY sometimes builds a Cyclone. And in fact, when he was first doing this build, and I saw him doing this build months ago, or at least a month ago, he was always building a Cyclone because it was that generic meaty unit in the early game which keeps him safe. So rather than that last game where we saw him like just defend with a few Marines, a Hellion, the single Reaper at the start, and like he was like barely defending the early pressure of the 2 Reaper Hellion, we're actually now going to take a look at him when he's in a bit of a safer situation. And this is what I'd advise to a lot of players who struggle to have as perfect defense as TY in those other games. Like you'll see TY on Cactus Valley just defend with like Reaper Marine Hellion, and he has like no scouting information on what his opponent's doing at all, and he'll still skip the Cyclone. But here on Abyssal Reef, we are going to see once again TY only checks for proxies near his base, checks for the common 2-Rex or 3-Rex Reaper locations, goes for his expand build, exact same opening, Barracks Reaper, factory, you know, reactor, second depot, second gas. His Reaper goes out to this ledge. It's an important ledge to sit on to intercept your opponent's Reapers. Skirmishes out on the map just a little bit. Doesn't get much done, just kind of scouting around. But you're going to notice this time he opens up with a Cyclone. So this is that reaction I was talking about, where on maps where you feel like, you know, you just want to be a little bit more comfortable, or if you just do this every game because you're like, I'm just not as confident defending, Cyclone makes me happy, this is another way you can do the build. What's important here is that delays the starport. You can notice that starport gets delayed by about 15-20 seconds, but the Cyclone is going to shut down things like this. And this is important if you're playing with no scouting like TY does, because only at about this point in the game, at like what, 2:30, no, not even 2:30, like basically 3 minutes. So his Reaper's gonna jump up, jump down. He's like, I need to scout what's going on because I don't know what's happening. And he's gonna come in with this Reaper, right? And he goes, oh, you're actually doing a double gas 1 base build. Scouting this at 3 minutes, this is too late to react. TY luckily either knows how his opponents like to play on this map or knows that the rush distance is shorter on this map. Whatever the case is, it's fortuitous for him that he is building this Cyclone, because otherwise it would be very difficult to defend here with just Marines and a Hellion, especially if opposing Cyclones like rallied across the map for Alive or extra Hellions. So just getting the early Cyclone, delaying the starport is one way you can do this. How does this change the build? It doesn't. It just delays the Raven production, but otherwise you still can just do things the exact same way. We are going to notice TY changes things up this game. I think this is specifically just him saying, you know what? I think my opponent might get really aggressive. I want to be like super safe. He actually goes for a tank and a Viking first. And that might be because he spotted the production. I'm not 100% sure. Either way, basically, he just chooses to go a tank and a Viking in this game specifically. But otherwise, he always goes back to that same path. Let's fast forward. Raven starts. Third command center goes down. Second Raven. Does he build a second Raven this game? I can't quite remember. Yeah, he still goes for the second Raven this game. But you'll notice here as well what I was talking about, where, oh, you know what? He's actually going to go for a faster second and third barracks this game because he feels more pressure. It's a more aggressive map. It's actually a map where siege tanks down here can siege up your natural. So this is a map where it's a little bit dicier. And we're going to actually see him almost get completely destroyed here by this sick auto turret timing from Alive. Alive here took advantage of all that pressure. And behind it just rushed up to 2 Ravens a lot quicker. Had a lot more Raven energy. Those auto turrets break the 2 siege tanks. But you can notice TY here, even though he's surprised by this push, he avoided those auto turrets, he pulled back from them with all of his units, all of his workers, waited for them to run out, and only then re-engaged with his units. So even though his siege tanks went down, he didn't panic, he played patiently, and it worked out really quite decently. You might think 7 SCVs dead is pretty bad, but at the end of that, he's actually up a worker still, because, remember, Alive delayed his base for a long time. This is Alive from the group stage, by the way. This is where Alive actually 2-0'd TY. So yeah, TY does lose this game eventually, but you can see even after being surprised by some attacks, he does end up on relatively even footing. And this double Raven just provides you with such nice, sexy strength. So guys, I want you to start shouting out questions in chat, any that you do want to ask to do with this. I'm going to go over 1 or 2 more small things while I answer those. And yeah, generally, I just love this build. It's something I do want to start playing with every now and then a little bit on ladder. But like I said, it's very high skill ceiling as well, and it's also kind of hard to defend a lot of stuff. So it really would be something where if you're someone who actually likes to do multiple builds in a matchup, Proxima Station, Honor Grounds, these are the maps for it. They're the maps which you're really gonna have a lot of success with it on. You know what? We might as well keep watching this game actually then while we watch this, because we do get to see an example of something else which I find interesting, which is how you can look at how TY sets up his defense in this like very standard formation. Check this out: siege tank, and his units are just kind of like spread around. He's got a Viking patrolling up there because. And he's like, you know what, I should try to get some vision of any attack before it moves in. So he starts putting like a few spotting units out on the map, just a little bit. And it's funny because he almost wins this game, even though Alive is the one who's like attacking, doom dropping all game long. We're going to see Alive move out with like this big attack really soon. And TY actually just is so good at hanging on. It's bloody impressive. I don't know how he does it sometimes. Like Innovation as well, when he was playing his games, I was just constantly looking at it like, okay, like do you really want to put this much pressure on yourself to defend perfectly every game? But then I very quickly realized that what's so good about it is these guys just get so good at this one set pattern of this is what I do every game. And I have dealt with every attack before. So even when I get surprised and lose to one, it just like gets added to my bank of knowledge for how to defend the next time. And it really puts the onus on their opponents to try and break them before they get out of control. We can see here in this game 66 SCVs versus 49 SCVs. He's up a siege tank. He's just down a few Marines, down a few medevacs. And most importantly, he's sitting back a lot more. He's not as mobile because his combat shields isn't done. Oh no, his combat shields did finish actually. Oh yeah, he did a weird thing and he actually went for a fast second tech lab this game. So even though he has less Marine production because of it, he wanted to go shields and stim at the same time. And notice he actually picks up what is like a counter doom drop here because he spotted a doom drop coming up the left flank of the map. The doom drop turned around for Alive. It didn't want to fly through the missile turret. And Alive just settles for kind of coming down in here and denying mining on this base.
Our SCVs are under attack.
And TY is realizing, oh, I probably can't break that. Oh no, let's go for it. Auto turrets to absorb the first shots and do damage. Marines stim in. But he wasn't watching his natural, and he's just realized, oh god, I've lost so many SCVs. And he actually pulls back mid-engage with his army on that left flank. We're watching on TY's camera right now. And then he's like, oh no, there's a drop in the main as well. And so he does fall apart just a little bit here. Just too slow to react to that drop in the natural is what caused the catastrophic damage. Because the third base is actually just finishing turning into an orbital right now for Alive. Alive only just transferring workers down there. So TY could actually lose a bunch of mining on this base and still be completely fine. And once TY gets Liberators up, along with his Vikings controlling the skies, that is when he absolutely tears the game apart. But man, playing against Alive looks like such a friggin' nightmare. It is gross. Sojourners says, where can I find these replays? Well, you can actually find the entire build order and all the replays for everything ever. Whoops, sorry, wrong keyboard. On Spawning Tool. I'm going to link that for you guys in chat. If you're watching on YouTube, check it out in the comments section below. Yeah, TY loses that command center. He tries to counterattack here, and he's going to try and get something done. But yeah, Spawning Tool is where you can always find all your build orders. In terms of replay packs for all the ESL events are always released very promptly afterwards. I think the DreamHack ones have been released most of the time lately as well. So you always just Google it, look it up on Reddit. There's always a thread if you want to download the entire replay pack. But anything that I do a show on will always be featured on Spawning Tool. So go check it out there. And you've got the whole build order write-up and everything as well. So anyway, guys, we can see Alive here. Just a bit too good with the multi-prong coming in from 3 different angles. TY's defense was good, but not quite perfect. Maybe if he had a little bit more vision on the right-hand side of the map, it would have been better. This is a very tricky map with how many paths there are. So this is definitely a map where it is kind of weaker to sit back as much as TY does. And he's pretty much down and out now. He's way down. So let's hop on out of there. We don't need to watch the end of that game. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this. So sick double Raven 3cc build. Great for Proxima and Undergrounds. Good for anyone that loves their crazy macro play on the other maps as well. Yeah, thanks for hanging out, guys. I don't think there was any other good questions. Let me just double check. Make sure I didn't miss anything. Is there any point in this build order where you want to scout the enemy base, says Sicanius? No, that's the thing. That's what's cool about this build as well, is it's one of those, hey, I block 95% of things that can come my way. And it's all just about having your units in the right position, generally defensively, and every now and then scouting around your base or having a few spotter units out front your base, and that's all you need to do. So it's actually really cool. Is there any way to use a variation of this build aggressively, says Samtastic? Okay, that's a good question. So I've seen TY. The first times I saw TY doing this build, and the thing is, it's risky if you do want to use this build offensively, but I saw him using it in one of the Korean leagues, or was it like Corsair Cup or something? I was watching replays of him use it where he was always sending the first 2 Ravens across the map and doing the auto turret harass, and he was like running in the main, drop an auto turret, running the natural, drop an auto turret, you know, in and out. But it meant his defense at home was much lighter, and that's a really big gamble if your opponent goes for Banshees. Luckily, because Ravens are so popular right now, Banshee is very uncommon. So if you feel like taking a gamble with this build, Just send your ravens across the map, start harassing those mineral lines, and a lot of the time you can get away with it. Of course, you are also then going to be a little bit exposed if they push your front with some sort of ground push or some sort of air push because you don't have the auto turrets there. But if your opponent doesn't hit that narrow window and then starts losing SCVs, it'll really pay dividends for you because you're both damaging their economy while being very, very greedy. Yeah. All right, guys. So thank you very much for hanging out. Don't forget to hug a watermelon, kick a walrus, and of course, punch a cactus to the moon. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye and good night.